Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a game that takes itself very seriously. Ignore that. Okay, maybe Expedition 33 isn't serious all of the time.
Time for swim.
And one of the biggest examples of this is probably the story of the 60th expedition, or as I like to call them, the GIGACHAD Expedition, because these mad lads and lasses that Expedition 60 mainly consisted of was what I can best describe as a bunch of Baki characters. Yes, you did in fact hear me right. Expedition 60 was full of a bunch of aura farming Baki characters. Well, or I guess JoJo characters would work as well if that's what you're more familiar with. But regardless though, they were built different.
I'm built different.
And the craziest part might just be how this isn't even an over-exaggeration, because these absolute freaks of nature trained their bodies rigorously, managing to achieve insane speed and strength by the time their expedition came about. And back during their training days, they sadly received a lot of ridicule from the citizens of Lumiere, who for the most part believed all of this strength training was a waste of effort and kinda stupid. But being affected by the ridicule of lesser men didn't affect the members of Expedition 60 at all.
Protein.
And they continued their training day after day, and when the day eventually arrived, when it was time for them to finally depart for the mainland, well, when they arrived, they brought with them the force and sheer destructive power, akin to that of a tsunami. Because what Expedition 60 did to the Neverons can best be described as being the polar opposite of what Renoir did to Expedition 33 27 years later. Okay, pause. Quick side tangent. Bear with me for a second, but I have this tinfoil hat theory, right? That one of the reasons as to why the Gestrals are so obsessed with perfecting their fighting capabilities are because they saw what freaks of nature the members of Expedition 60 managed to become. And probably thought, well damn, I gotta get to work. But obviously sounding a lot more French. And yes, I am indeed fully aware of the fact that the Gestrals have always been quote-unquote combat sexual, for lack of a better word.
Slow as ever.
But I do genuinely believe Expedition 60 did at least partially bring the Gestrals' fighting obsession to the next level. But anyway, back to the story of Expedition 60. So after plowing through half the continent's Neverons, okay, so there's no proof of them literally doing that, but I like to think they did because, let's be real here, it does check out. They eventually reached one of the Gestral beaches and decided to stop and rest there for a while, and there you can also learn that at least one of them managed to complete this godforsaken bullshit-ass game mode. Yes, even the Expedition 60, the GIGACHAD Expedition, that almost exclusively consisted of Baki characters, struggled with this fucking game mode. But I digress. Eventually, one of the members of Expedition 60 managed to get to the top, and in doing so, received a reward that in classic Gestral fashion was some random-ass piece of clothing. So in equally classic Expedition 60 fashion, they declined the award. Because, oh right, I almost forgot to mention, Expedition 60 seemingly did their entire expedition naked. Why, you might ask? I don't know. But what I do know is that it's a shame we didn't get the Expedition 60 outfits for our own part. But enough about that. So after their short respite at the Gestral beach, Expedition 60 continued their journey towards the monolith. And now you might be thinking, how in the world are they gonna manage to get past the barrier protecting the monolith without the barrier breaker? And the answer to that question is, they literally just walked through it. No, seriously, they straight up just walked through the damn thing. How? Well, apparently it was thanks to their immense aura that was, well, so incredibly immense that it somehow protected them from the monolith barrier's power. But it was also after entering the monolith where Expedition 60 faced their first real big obstacle. Besides that godforsaken Jethro Beach minigame, of course, because even with how resilient the members of Expedition 60 were, not even they were a match against the entities that reside within the monolith. But even with the cards stacked against them, Expedition 60 carried on, and somehow managed to discover the secrets behind the paintress and the true source of the gommage, and it all culminated with Expedition 60 having to make a tough decision. Having now discovered the secret behind the paintress, Expedition 60 had to make a tough choice and disregard the entire mission of the expedition in an attempt to stop the true source of the gommage, leading to all but one of the members of Expedition 60 deciding to fight against the curator trapped at the bottom of the monolith in an attempt to stop the gommage once and for all, with the last remaining member being sent back to warn Lumiere of the truth behind the gommage. But alas, even though Expedition 60 managed to reach the depth of the monolith, even then, the strength of the GIGACHAD Expedition was not enough to bring down the one who paints death, the true source of the gommage, whilst the remaining member somehow managed to swim almost all the way back to Lumiere. But alas, eventually, time caught up to him, and before he managed to reach the shores of Lumiere, the gommage took him. And with him disappearing, so too did all the secrets Expedition 60 managed to uncover disappear as well beneath the waves, therefore bringing the tale of Expedition 60 to an end. That is, of course, until the final expedition, the Disaster Expedition. And more commonly known as Expedition 33, who eventually uncovered what heroic deeds Expedition 60, the GIGACHAD Expedition, managed to achieve all those years prior. And thus also bringing this video to an end. If you liked it, may I encourage you to maybe check out this video.